Hey guys, how's it going? SleepingHollow here, and today we're doing a Blender tutorial. And this tutorial is going to focus on creating a single texture map for an object in Blender that has multiple materials. So it's pretty easy. It's going to be pretty fast. So we're just going to go quickly through it. Hopefully, anyone watching this has some idea of how to use Blender. You know, you have the shortcut keys in mind and whatnot. I did enable screen capping though, or screen keys, so you will be able to follow along. So with all that being said, let's just jump into it. So first thing we want to do is make sure our model is like perfectly set up for this. So we want to check it really quickly. And before I do that, I'm actually going to take this model and move it to the second layer. Mainly just because all this lighting, I don't want it to be in the way. So this model was actually sent to me by a friend because he was the one who asked me this question. He wanted to know how to do it. So I'm going to show him and all of you how to do it if you don't know. So let's go solid mode to check this model, and as you can see, there is an issue with it. The normals are off for all the slices of this thing. So we're going to want to fix this really quickly, and what we're going to do is we're going to go to edit mode, and we're just going to hit Control N. And that reassigns the normals. It tries to figure out how the normals should be, which, you know, you can see here it fixes it. So I'm just going to go through all this really quickly and make sure these normals are fine, so we'll be right back. Okay, now we have the normals all set up and ready to go. So now we're going to move on to the next thing. And now, so the way we're going to do this next part is we want to make sure that we're going to be creating a new UV map. And what I mean by that is if you go to the data tab right here, this little triangle, upside down triangle, and you click your object or objects, you'll see that there's a UV map. Now, the only one in this model that has it is this front one, or this like little seed thing. And the reason this has it is because it has an actual, material in it, or an actual texture file in it, an image file, sorry, and that's the little face right here. So that's the only reason why this has a UV map, because the rest, actually, I don't even think these have been unwrapped. Yeah, they haven't. So, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna select them all and give them all a UV map, a new one. We're gonna create a whole new one because that's the one we're gonna be using when we bake all these together. So if you just have one object, you can still follow along. It's the same process, except for this one, I have to select all of these because my friend, when he animated this, he actually animated it using the actual objects themselves, not using bones. So I can't join these all together as one object. But it's the same process. So select your object or objects, and then we're gonna go to edit mode. Now, I just want to bring this up really quickly. In Blender itself, you can't edit multiple objects at once, but I did find a cool add-on. So I'll leave a link in the description of where you can get it, the link to get it, and hopefully you know how to install add-ons onto Blender. But if you do have multiple objects, this is how you do it. So you're going to select them all just with A. And then under the Tools tab on the left, there's a tool is going to pop up right here, Multi-Object UV Editing. And all we're going to do is click on that. And there we go. We're editing all of these. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go under here, under the data tab, and we're going to press the plus button. And we're going to create a new UV map. You can rename it to whatever you want. You don't have to rename it, but just, you know, for clarity, I'm just going to call this Melon UV. Okay. And now we can tab out of here, and you can see all of these should have that same one. If you just have one object, then of course it's going to show up there. But make sure you still have your original. So we got that done. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and unwrap this model. So the way we're going to do this, let's open up the UV image editor. And so depending on what you have, now really quickly before I continue on, what we're going to want to do is you can see right here, if I go to the regular UV map, this one itself, because of course these two have that image I showed you earlier. We want to preserve those in the original UV map. We don't want to mess with those. So what we're going to do is we're going to select them all, click on the Melon UV map. Make sure that one's highlighted, selected. And now if we hit U and just smart unwrap this, there we go. And now you'll see if I click on the original one, it saved them. That's what we want. And then when we click on the new one, you can see it has the new ones exactly how we want them. So we're just going to move those up. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to select it all, go back to this multi-editing, and I'm just going to smart unwrap all these. Now, depending on your object, you might want to pause the video here and actually unwrap it properly, you know, with the seams and all that, if you want to. But I'm just quickly going through this just to show you how it's done. So for me, for this object, it doesn't matter. So that's what I did with the melon UVs, and just to make sure it's right, we're gonna click through. Yeah, okay, so this is all set up, ready to go. So now we move on to the next step. And sorry if I'm going a little fast, feel free to go back and watch it again. I just kind of want to get this as soon as possible, get this all done as soon as possible, just to show you the process of how it's done. Once you get it once, you'll know how to do it over and over again. So now we're going to create the texture image. So right here, we're going to stick with the UV image editor. Go ahead and press new. I'm just going to call this melon texture. And I'm just going to leave the settings how they are. And there we go. Okay, we have this ready to go. So now what we're going to want to do is we're actually going to want to, let's change this to the node editor. Again, I'm going to pick all of them. And you don't, obviously you don't have to do this. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through each one of these materials. And we're going to add a new node. And we're going to add the image texture. So go ahead and add one of these. You don't have to attach it to anything. Just leave it as it is. And go ahead and click the new texture image you created, which for me is the melon texture. So now I'm going to copy it. Go to the next one, paste. Go to the next one, paste. Etc, etc. We're going to do this for every single material that we have, that we use. Alright, so there. So obviously this is the one that has the little face on it. So we're just going to throw it in here. So now we have it on each and every single one, which is what we want. And we're almost done. So now what we're going to want to do is make sure for your objects that you have the camera should be selected on the original UV map. But what you want to do is make sure the new UV map is highlighted. I know it seems kind of strange, but camera's on the original, highlight the new one. And so what we're going to do is we're going to select them all. Let's go to the render tab. Go all the way to the bottom to bake. We're going to change this combined into diffuse. Unselected direct and indirect, we just want color. And so now let's actually jump back to the UV image editor with our new texture here. And we're just going to press bake. Now we're just going to let it do its thing and we'll come back once it's done. Alright, so now it's done. And as you can see, it is kind of messy. I'm going to have to do it again. But this was basically just to show you that it does work. So if we go in here, the most important one is the face. It's there. It works just fine. So obviously I can go through this and do it again and make it better. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make the margin into 1 and bake again. Now again, if you take your time to unwrap your model properly and actually pack the UVs properly, you won't have this issue. Usually margin 16 will be just fine. But if it is a lot thinner, if you do have to conserve more space, you will have to turn that down more. But let's see how this works out. Alright, so now that's done, we can look at here and we can make sure none of them are overlapping. Right there you see some overlap. So I'm going to quickly, just because I want to make sure I get this right, I'm going to take some time and actually I'm going to unwrap this properly. So I'll be right back. Alright, now that we're back, we can take a quick look. I took a little, just a few more, I took another minute and just kind of unwrap this a little better. So now it's a lot cleaner. I do have a lot of space, but as you can see now our materials are assigned properly. There's no, it's not leaking through each other. So it's all perfect. And there's that little face. Alright, so this texture is done. We got them all into one texture, which is great. Now what we're going to want to do is for your object or objects, we're going to want to remove all these materials. Alright, so go ahead and do that for all of them. They are no longer needed. If you want to create another backup of this before you get started and just move it to another layer, you can do that just in case something went wrong. But for me, I went through this whole thing at least 6 times now to make sure I had this whole process down. Alright, so now go ahead and select your object, or well, you have to start with one, and we're going to create new. I'm going to call this melon texture. And now we're going to keep it as diffuse. We're going to change the color to image texture. And then go ahead and select the melon texture. Now if we go to render mode, you can see, hey, there it is. So now we're going to go through the rest of them. Just click on the little tab right here and just go to melon texture. And we're going to do that for all our objects. Wow, I can't talk. So if you just have one object, obviously this is going to be fast and you can see your results a lot faster. But for me, because I have to deal with all of these, I have to assign it to each one. Alright, great. Now let's go ahead and shrink this a bit. Now let's check it out. Oh, Now you can see this is the one issue I forgot to mention. The reason this isn't showing up is because on the render tab for this, the rendered is selected on the original. So now we click on the new one, and there we go, perfectly set up. So now we can actually get rid of the original one. So go ahead and click it and just hit the minus button. We don't need that one anymore. And there we go. Let's go ahead and bring in the lighting. And yeah, there it is. It's working out perfectly. And there's that little face. All right, great. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to bring this into Unity. So let's go ahead and first let's save this. Let me just go in second layer just because we just want to save the object itself. I don't want to save all that lighting. So having all these objects selected, we're going to go ahead and go to Save As. We're going to go to our Unity projects. No, that's not where I have the one. Okay. So inside this Unity project, I'm going to go ahead and I create a watermelon folder. Go in there. I'm just going to save this as is. So Save As blend file. And now we also want to save our image. So go ahead and go to your image down here, Image tab, Save As Image. And then, you can create the materials file if you want. And then just go in there or wherever you want to save this image file. Just make sure it's inside, Unity, of course. And hit Save As. Okay, now let's jump into Unity. All right, so now we're in Unity and it's going to load up the files. It's importing them. Okay, so there's our melon and there's our watermelon. Okay, and the animation works out just fine. Cool. Now we're going to apply these materials. So what we're going to do is in materials, use external materials. By base name is fine. Just hit apply. And what that's going to do is it's going to create the material. Obviously, you don't have to do this. You can just drag it in. But the reason I do this is because I can just drag these into the albedo right here. And now if we go back, there we go. It's properly textured. Now we can bring this in. And look at that. It's working out just fine. So we can also go to animations, hit play. And there we go. It's working 100%. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you found some use of it. Yeah, I'm hoping to do more tutorials with things. Like I said, this was a suggestion from a friend who was trying to get this to work with this exact model. So I hope you guys enjoyed again. If you did, leave a like or a comment, whatever you like to do. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.